Iraqi forces closer to recapturing the city of Mosul. Reports say a rapid response team stormed a government complex in an overnight raid, killing dozens of ISIS fighters. The main government building, the central bank, and the museum now once again held by Iraqi troops. Mosul is the last major stronghold for ISIS in Iraq. The terror group controls now just the western part of that city. Meantime, ISIS fighters taking responsibility for a deadly attack in Afghanistan. Officials say at least 30 people are dead, dozens injured after a raid on a military hospital in Kabul. Gunmen, they were dressed as doctors, got into the building, taking on security forces for several hours. Connor Powell is live in our Middle East Bureau with more on this. All right, Connor, what is the latest in Afghanistan?
Well, Shannon, we understand that most, if not all of those that were killed were soldiers recovering from wounds, Afghan soldiers recovering from wounds that they had sustained while battling the Taliban. This was the main military hospital in Kabul. It's just across the street from the U.S. Embassy. It's in a heavily guarded diplomatic area. And ISIS, not the Taliban, actually is taking responsibility for carrying out this attack. They used a car bomb outside of the main entrance, and then gunmen dressed as doctors with lab coats then stormed the building. A gunfight then took place for the next 2 to 3 or so hours. Afghan commandos were ultimately able to bring an end to that gunfight, but not after about 30 or so people. 50 were wounded. This was a really brazen attack, a pretty low attack given what we've seen even by the Taliban. But the most interesting thing about this is, Shannon, that it's ISIS that's claiming responsibility and not the Taliban.
All right, so what does this tell us now about ISIS's capabilities, why they'd be now so much more active in Afghanistan?
Well, ISIS, as we've seen across the entire Middle East region, we've seen their growth, and they've been popping up, and they've battled both Afghan forces, security forces, and also the Taliban in Afghanistan. But this is a type of attack that we've not seen from them in the past. It's a much more complex, well-planned. It's a type of attack that we've traditionally seen carried out by the Haqqani network, which is a faction of the Taliban. This is something that we've not seen from ISIS, and for security analysts and those who are working, the U.S. personnel working in Kabul, this is alarming to see ISIS carry out this type of attack. It's just not the type of capabilities that we've seen them carry out or have in the past. And so if you're now throwing this into the equation in terms of the stability in Afghanistan, you have the Taliban who have long carried out these types of attacks. Now you have ISIS. That is a recipe for even greater disaster than we've already seen in their last few years in Afghanistan, Shannon.